The dust in Copper Ridge never truly fell. It hung there like a verdict, tinting every porch, window, and heartbeat the same tired brown that seemed to sink into people's spirits. Cassandra Mitchell once believed this place held hope. 3 years earlier, she'd arrived with a teacher's certificate and a bright, stubborn heart, sure she could shape a rough frontier town into something kinder. Now she sat on a splintered jail bunk, blue dress ripped and dirty, watching Sheriff Tom Bradley avoid her gaze as he pushed a tin plate of cold beans through the bars. Hunger had been her shadow for weeks. "Eat up, Miss Mitchell," Bradley muttered, the lines in his sun-creased face tightening, maybe with regret. "Council meets tonight. They'll decide your situation." Her fingers shook as she lifted the spoon. She didn't need the sheriff to explain. Everyone in Copper Ridge knew what that meant. Ever since Harold Wade's boy Marcus had scattered his lies like sparks in dry grass, trouble had followed her like smoke. It had begun with small things. Marcus Wade, barely 18, loud with his father's money and name, lingered after lessons to ask questions that weren't about books at all. When she kept firm boundaries and turned aside his bolder and bolder remarks, admiration soured into spite. The blow landed one Tuesday in September. Marcus accused her of making advances, playing the innocent while painting her as a desperate spinster. In a town where Harold Wade owned half the businesses and held notes on most of the rest, the boy's word weighed more than proof. Within a week, she lost her school. Within 2, no one would hire her. Women who had once shared quilts and coffee crossed the street. Men who used to tip their hats now looked at her with doubt, and something uglier. "Shameful," Cassandra heard Mrs. Adelaide Porter hiss outside the general store. An educated woman taking advantage of that poor boy. What's the world coming to? The knife twisted deep. Cassandra had given her life to teaching, careful and patient, never once acting improper toward student. Yet truth didn't matter in a place pinched by Harold Wade's purse strings. After 3 days without food, coins gone, the landlord pressing for rent, she did what desperate stomachs do. She took a warm loaf from Baker Wilson's window, 15 cents worth, and it sealed her fate. Thieving on top of everything else, Mayor Richards said, as if reading a righteous line. This woman threatens the moral fiber of our town. Now evening shadows crept across her cell. Voices rose from the town hall next door. She shut her eyes and tried to see her father's face by lamplight back in Ohio. Hear him read scripture. Hear him say, "The Lord works in mysterious ways, Cassie girl." Sometimes what looks like an ending is only a different beginning. The talk next door grew sharper. Through thin boards she caught hard words, burden, waste, example. Then Harold Wade's deep voice rolled over them all. Keeping her fed in that cell costs money we don't have. For what? Release her so she can stir up more trouble? We can solve 2 problems at once. A hush. Then uneasy murmurs. Cassandra pressed to the wall, heartbeat drumming. "The Apache raids have bled us," Wade went on. "Lost 3 men last month. Their blood hunters made it worse. What if we show good faith, 1 woman for a promise of peace?" "Harold, you can't be serious," Dr. Franklin blurted, thin and shocked. "That's near murder." "Is it?" Wade snapped. "Or justice? She's done nothing but harm here. And we all know what the Apache do with gifts. Ends a problem quick." More murmurs. Some protest, some thought. Mayor Richards added, "The blood hunter's been quiet of late. Might work. Might buy time." "You're speaking of sacrificing a human being," the doctor said, voice shaking. "I'm speaking of protecting this town," Wade shot back. "She's ruined our youth, stolen bread, and shown no remorse. Let her finally serve a purpose." The argument dragged on. Cassandra sank to her knees. She'd heard the tales of the Apache they called the Blood Hunter, a tall, silent raider. No witnesses, no mercy. The name alone could still a saloon. The council meant to hand her to him, trading her life for a thin shield of safety. When Sheriff Bradley finally came with keys, his face looked bleached by moonlight. "I'm sorry, Miss Mitchell." "I am." The council decided. "Tomorrow morning we make the exchange." Exchange. Her voice was barely air. "The Apache blood hunter," he said. "He's accepted arrangements before. They believe," he couldn't meet her eyes. "They believe it's for the greater good." She stared at him and saw not evil, only fear. Men choosing the easy road over the right one. Something inside her shifted. The fear stayed, but a harder edge set beneath it. "I see," she said calm. "When does this greater good take place?" "Dawn. Devil's Canyon." His hands shook as he turned the lock. "This isn't how I wanted it to go." After he left, she listened to the town's nighttime chorus, the bark of dogs, a slurred piano, wind whistling through gaps in the walls. Tomorrow she would leave Copper Ridge forever. Whether she'd live to see another sunset, who could say? But for the first time since Marcus Wade's life shattered her life, she felt more than despair. She felt anger. And maybe anger was the one thing she needed to face what waited. Dawn arrived both too fast and too slow. She'd lain awake all night counting heartbeats, wondering which might be the last. Bradley brought eggs and bacon, mercy on a plate, and she ate without taste. "Time to go, Miss Mitchell." Flat words from a man doing a task he hated. Deputy Cole Hutchkins stood behind him, young and jumpy, hand on his gun for comfort. They led her by back lanes, away from the main street and its staring eyes. But news always outruns feet in a small town. Curtains twitched. Mothers yanked children indoors. Mrs. Porter planted herself in a doorway, arms crossed, voice sharp enough to cut. "Should have thought of the cost before your wicked ways." Cassandra kept her chin high. If these were to be her last hours among townsfolk, she wouldn't break for their pleasure. The wagon jolted toward Devil's Canyon for a hard hour. Mayor Richards sat across from her, hands clenched bone white. Harold Wade rode alongside, jaw set like iron. "You know," Richard said suddenly, voice almost lost under the wheels, "this isn't personal, Miss Mitchell. It's practical." "Practical," she echoed, looking at the man who'd once praised her teaching at church socials. "Yes, bartering a life often is." He flinched and fell quiet. Devil's Canyon earned its name. Wind moaned through red rock and made voices out of air. A fitting place for the council's version of justice. The narrow pass had tasted blood before Apache raids, army skirmishes, hot-headed duels. They stopped where the canyon widened into a bowl of rust-red cliffs. Morning light washed the stone gold and crimson, beautiful and cruel. A handful from town had gathered, councilmen, a few big names, Bradley's unofficial posse. All men. The women might whisper about Cassandra, but they wouldn't soil their hands by watching. "He'll come," Wade said, checking his pocket watch. "He's always on time." They waited in dry silence, broken only by fidgeting horses and low, tense talk from men convincing themselves they were righteous. Cassandra sat in the wagon bed, fingers laced, studying faces. Fear rolled off them like heat from a stove. Whatever they knew about the blood hunter had grown men sweating in the cool morning. Horses felt it first. They danced, ears forward, nostrils flaring. Then came hoofbeats, too smooth, too measured, like horse and rider were a single creature moving across ground others would pick through. He appeared at the canyon's mouth like a shadow poured into shape, tall, on a paint mare that seemed to flow over stones. Even from a distance, Cassandra saw why they named him Blood Hunter. He rode with a quiet grace that hinted at coiled danger. The town men drew closer together. Hands drifting to guns they prayed they wouldn't fire. Harold Wade stepped out to play spokesman. "You came," he called, voice trying on courage. "Good. We have what we discussed." The warrior approached, and Cassandra finally saw him clear. Younger than she'd thought, maybe 30, strong features. Dark hair, catching the light. He wore Apache dress mixed with gear taken from white men, buckskin leggings, cotton shirt, a gun belt that likely once circled a cavalry waist. But it was his eyes that held her, dark, sharp, missing nothing. They scanned the men like a wolf sizing threats, then fell on Cassandra, sitting like bundled cargo, waiting to be handed over. Something flickered across his face and vanished. He stopped 20 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to spring free if this turned sour. When he spoke, his English was clean and unaccented, which surprised more than a few. "You bring me a woman?" It wasn't a question. Wade nodded eagerly. As agreed. One woman for considerations. She's been only trouble, thief, bad influence, loose morals. The Apache's gaze returned to Cassandra. She held it, refusing to look down. If she was to die, she'd do it standing straight. "Get down," he said softly, but with a command that left no doubt. Wade jerked his chin at Deputy Hutchins, who edged toward the wagon, not looking at her. "Come on, then. Don't make it worse." Cassandra climbed down, legs stiff. Dust swirled around her boots as she faced the man who would decide whether she saw nightfall. He slid from his horse in one smooth motion, and she realized how tall he was. Well over 6 feet, lean and strong from a life of work and weather. He came forward slowly, movements calm, not threatening, still. The Copper Ridge men tensed like they watched a predator. Up close, she could see the beadwork on his shirt. He spoke again. "Did they tell you why you're here?" His tone wasn't gentle, but it wasn't cruel. Curious, maybe. "They told me," Cassandra said, lifting her chin. "I'm the price of their peace of mind." Something like approval touched his eyes. "And you think this is justice?" "I think frightened people make choices they wouldn't otherwise," she answered carefully. Silence stretched tight. Harold Wade shifted, impatient. "Well, do we have an agreement or not?" The warrior faced the men. A few stepped back without meaning to. When he spoke, the words felt like stone. "I take her." Wade exhaled like a man spared. "Excellent. Then our understanding holds. For now." The warrior walked to his horse, reached into his saddlebag, and pulled out a rope. Cassandra braced to have her wrists bound. Instead, he handed it to her. "Hold this." Puzzled, she took it. He mounted and motioned for her to walk beside him. As they moved toward the canyon's mouth, Mayor Richards called, voice unsteady, "Miss Mitchell, I hope you find peace." She didn't turn. They kept on until Copper Ridge's voices faded into rock and wind. Only then did the Apache speak. "You can drop the rope." She looked down, surprised to see her fingers clenched around it. "I don't understand." "They needed to believe you were my captive," he said. "Now they do." He slowed the mare to match her steps. "What is your name?" "Cassandra Mitchell." "I am Nahuel," he said. The name rang like something that mattered. They walked on, leaving Devil's Canyon and the town that had thrown her away. The desert opened wide, beautiful and deadly under a climbing sun. "Where are we going?" she asked at last. Nahuel glanced down, and for the first time she thought she saw the beginning of a smile. "Away from them. After that, you decide." It struck her then, something that would have stunned Copper Ridge. For the first time in months, she felt safe. The Arizona flats peeled life down to the basics. As they left Devil's Canyon, Cassandra felt the last thin strings tying her to Copper Ridge snap one by one. The dust, the whispers, the heavy looks. Each step into open country cut them loose. Nahuel rode in quiet focus, his paint mare choosing careful paths through ground that looked impossible. Red stone thrust up like old bones, the sun climbing, promising a furnace by noon. Cassandra's boots, meant for classrooms and church pews, rubbed raw spots she tried not to favor. "We'll stop soon," Nahuel said without glancing down, as if he felt her wince. How did you know? Your breath shifted. You're guarding your left foot. The way he noticed unsettled her. In Copper Ridge, men saw women when it suited them. This man missed nothing. They paused in the slim shade of barrel cacti. Nahuel slid to the ground, pulled a leather water skin, and held it out. The water was warm and plain, but it tasted like life. Cassandra sipped with care, recalling her father's tales of travelers who died with full canteens because they rationed themselves to death. Drink more now, Nahuel said, watching. The desert takes what you won't give first. She drank again and felt steadier. He took a small swallow, then looped the skin back on his saddle. You could have killed me there, she blurted. They expected you to. Why didn't you? He was quiet a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried old ache. Because I know what it is to be given away by those meant to guard you. The answer closed further questions. He drew dried meat and corn cakes from his bags and split them, matter of fact. The simple food filled more than her stomach. The townsfolk knew you, she said between bites. Sometimes we arrange things, he replied. What sort of things? The kind that let people keep breathing a while longer. Cassandra studied him. The stories in Copper Ridge painted him as a monster, scalps, fires, no survivors. Yet this man shared water, spoke clean English, and had shown her more mercy in one morning than the town had in months. They call you Bloodhunter, she said. Names are tools, he answered. Useful sometimes. Is Nahuel your real name? Real enough. He scanned the horizon with practiced caution. We should move. Heat grows worse before it eases. They went deeper into country that looked untouched. Saguaro stood like sentries under a huge blue sky, arms lifted in a frozen prayer. Far mountains trembled in heat haze, purple and distant. Where are we going? Cassandra asked as they picked around loose rock. That depends. On what? What you want? She stalled at the question. No one had asked her that in Copper Ridge. Wants didn't matter there. First as a woman, then as the accused. Choice felt as foreign as this land. I don't know, she admitted. Then we let the land lead until you do. By noon the heat felt like a weight pressing on her chest. Sweat stung her eyes. The dress clung like a wet shroud. Nahuel called another halt beside a trickle spring that pooled small and green among stones. An impossible oasis, yet there it was. Rest, he said, dismounting. The desert kills the stubborn. She collapsed under a cottonwood, its leaves whispering. Nahuel tended the paint first, a striking mare with bright eyes and a coat that gleamed in the damp shade. She's beautiful, Cassandra murmured. Her name is Ayana, he said. It means eternal blossom. That's lovely. My grandmother named her. Something shadowed his face. She used to say some things bloom even in hard ground. They waited out the worst heat. Cassandra watched him when he wasn't looking. How he belonged to this place, reading signs she couldn't see. A hawk circled. He studied its path. A wind shift. He lifted his head like a hunting wolf, feeling change. You weren't always here, she said at last. What makes you think so? Your English, she said. It's very careful. Formal. Mission school, he said after a beat. San Xavier. Priests thought they could make me into something else. Did they? Depends. He gave a smile without warmth. They taught me to read their books, speak their words, think like they do. Useful and useless. Made me belong to neither world. Cassandra heard her own loneliness echo there, the in-between place where you fit nowhere. The town fears you, she said. Fear is useful, but it's not the whole truth. He watched Ayana crop the small grass patch. Truth is messy. Sometimes the legend does more work than the man. When late light cooled the earth, they moved again. The land softened, red rock yielding to rolling hills, mesquite and palo verde stretching their green fingers. Far ridges caught the last gold. "How far?" she asked, though she didn't know to where. "Depends on where we're going." You keep saying that. Because it's true. Most people walk roads someone else chose. You've got a chance to choose your own. The thought scared and thrilled her in equal measure. In Ohio she'd had a clean path. School, teach, maybe marry a steady man. Copper Ridge burned that path to ash. Now, walking beside this quiet fighter through unruled country, it felt like she stood at the shore of a wide, uncharted sea. What if I choose wrong? Wrong for who? He asked, and left the question hanging. They camped by a dry wash lined with mesquite. Nahuel gathered deadwood with quick, practiced hands, while Cassandra fumbled branches that snagged her torn skirt. "Here," he said, showing her. "Let the grain tell you where to break. Fight it, and it fights back." When the fire caught, it felt like a miracle after the day's wait. Night remade the desert. Silence turned into a choir. Coyotes yipping, small lives rustling in brush, wind threading the trees. "It's beautiful," Cassandra said, staring up at a sky crushed with stars. "The desert keeps its beauty for those who respect it," he replied. They ate another plain meal. Firelight cut hard lines across his face, carving the intelligence in his eyes. He was not the beast Copper Ridge had decided he was. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "Maybe I didn't," he said. "Maybe you helped me." "How?" "You reminded me not every gift is poison." Later, wrapped in a blanket he'd handed her, Cassandra lay beneath that endless sky and felt something crack open, freedom. The desert was hard and honest. It did not judge. It tested you and told the truth. Tomorrow would bring new trials and choices, but tonight, under the bright cold stars, she felt sure of one thing. She was exactly where she was meant to be. By their third night on the trail, they sheltered under an ancient oak that somehow held on in this rough land. Its twisted branches reached wide, blocking the cold wind that smelled of sage and far-off rain. Cassandra had started to learn the rhythm of travel, up before sunrise, resting at noon, guarding every sip of water and bite of food. Soft hands once used to chalk and books were hardening. Her skin had browned despite Nahuel's careful routes that skirted the worst sun. She was changing, leaner, steadier, becoming someone tougher than the woman who'd left Copper Ridge. "Tell me about the school," Nahuel said suddenly as they ate roasted rabbit he'd snared. The question surprised her. He rarely asked about her past. She watched him across the flames, trying to read his face. "What do you want to know?" "What you taught, why it mattered." "Literature mostly," she said, pulling the blanket closer. "History too. Arithmetic when I had to." She smiled a little. "Kids in Copper Ridge didn't care much about poetry, but I kept trying." "Poetry." No mockery in his voice, just curious. "You disapprove?" "I'm wondering why teach beauty in a place like Copper Ridge." "Because they needed to know it exists," she said softly. "That the world isn't only dust and letdowns." She studied him in the fire glow. "You understand that, don't you? Wanting more than just getting by." He stared into the flames a while. "The priests at San Xavier talked about beauty too," he said at last. "They called it God's grace, light even in dark places." "Did you believe them?" "For a time," he said, voice tight with old hurt. "Until I learned their grace came with rules." "What happened?" He stirred the coals, sparks twisting up into the night. "They wanted to save us from being Apache. Cut our hair. Ban our language. Teach that everything our people held dear was wrong." "But you stayed," she said. 8 years. Read Latin. Studied scripture. Even thought about vows. He met her gaze, firelight dancing in his dark eyes. "I was good at being what they wanted, until they said I could never go home." "Why?" "Because home was savage, and I was supposed to be civilized." The bitterness was sharp as glass. "They said my people would spoil the salvation they'd build in me." Cassandra felt a cold tug of recognition, a life squeezed between two worlds. "So you left." "I ran," he said, "like a thief stealing his own life back." He set the stick aside. "When I found my people again, I was almost a stranger. Too Apache for the mission. Too mission for the Apache." "Is that when you became what they call the blood hunter?" "Names grow out of need," he said. "Whites needed a monster for their fears. My people needed someone who could walk both paths." He shrugged. "I became what was needed." They sat, in easy quiet, listening to the night. Cassandra traced the likeness between them. Two lives twisted by other people's stories, shaped into roles they hadn't chosen. "What was his name?" Nahuel asked finally. "The one who lied about you." "Marcus Wade," she said, fingers tightening on the blanket. "His father owns half of Copper Ridge." "Tell me." So she did. At first the words stuck, then they spilled. She told him how Marcus lingered after lessons, how his talk turned bold, how she stayed proper and firm, mindful of his father's power. He was 18, she said to the flames. Old enough to know no means no, but still sure the world owed him what he wanted. "When I refuse, he chose. Either I yield to him, or he ruins me." They believe him? Nahuel's jaw set. "Of course," she said with a dry laugh. "He was Harold Wade's boy. I was just a teacher from Ohio, no family, no clout." She shook her head. "The same ladies who praised my teaching suddenly remembered every time I spoke too freely. And the bread." She closed her eyes. 3 days without eating. Savings gone. No work. Landlord threatening. I saw a loaf cooling on a sill, and I took it. 15 cents of bread, and that finished me. "Not the bread," Nahuel said quietly. "Their fear." "What was I to them then?" "Danger," he said. "A woman with her own mind. Someone who didn't shrink to fit their comfort." He held her eyes. "That scares people in places like Copper Ridge." The truth hit hard. She'd spent months asking what she'd done wrong. But the real crime was refusing to be small. "So they traded me to the monster," she said. "To the story of a monster," he answered. "Not the same thing, isn't it?" He rose to check Ayanna. When he returned, his face was calm again. "You want to know which stories are true?" It wasn't a question. She nodded. "Some are," he said, voice steady. "War makes men into things they wouldn't be in peace. I've killed whites, taken property, burned buildings, made them afraid to ride far." He paused. "But I've never harmed a child, never forced a woman, never killed a man who wasn't trying to kill me or mine. The rest, the scalps, the mindless cruelty, that's the legend, not the man." "Why tell me this?" "You should know who you're walking with," he said. "And because living out here means seeing people as they are, not as the tales paint them." The fire popped. Something shifted between them, deeper trust, or maybe just the quiet relief of being seen truly for once. "Teach me," she said suddenly. "To do what?" "To survive. Read the land like you do. Catch the signs." She leaned forward, surprised at the force in her own voice. "I'm done being helpless." He studied her a long beat. "It's not easy. The desert doesn't forgive. Neither did Copper Ridge." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Tomorrow then. We start with water." Water. How to find it. How to save it. How to know too little from too much, he said, nodding toward the dark beyond their camp. Everything else grows from there. As they settled down, a new feeling stirred in her, not fear, not grief, expectation. For the first time since Ohio, she was walking toward something, not only a way. The desert was harsh but honest. It might test her to breaking, but it would not lie. "Nahuel," she said into the dark after the fire sank low. "Yes. Thank you for not being the monster they decided you were." His answer floated soft as the night wind. "Thank you for not being the victim they tried to make you." Under the bright sweep of stars, Cassandra dreamed not of what she'd lost, but of what might come, unmapped, uncertain, and finally hers to choose. The fifth morning rose clear and sharp, a warning for the heat to come. Nahuel was already packing, his motions quick and sure. In the last few days she'd learned his habits, the morning scan of the horizon, the check of the mare's hooves and muscles, the way he read small changes in breeze or light that might mean weather. "Tracking today," he said, handing her a strip of meat and a careful share of water. The desert teaches by doing. She had come to like his plain way. After Copper Ridge's polite smiles tied to mean hearts, his words were a relief, simple and true. They had walked less than an hour when Ayana's ears snapped forward. Nahuel's hand found the rifle across his back, his whole body going still. "What is it?" Cassandra whispered. "Listen." At first she heard only the flat hush, wind and dry grass, a hawk far off. Then a thin, high sound reached them and chilled her blood. "Children," she breathed. "Crying." "We keep moving," Nahuel said, tone flat and final. But Cassandra had already seen the thin column of smoke lifting black into the morning sky. The teacher in her leapt awake. "There are children out there. Not our concern. They're crying." "The desert tricks the ear," he said, grip tightening on the reins. He didn't push Ayana forward. "Could be a trap. Could be my people. Could be soldiers. None of it our fight." She stared at the smoke, heart pounding. She knew he was right about danger. They were two people alone in hard country, owing nothing to anyone. But that sound. "I'm going," she said, quiet and sure. "I'm not asking." He turned fully, warning clear in his eyes. "You don't know what you're walking toward. This isn't a classroom. It can kill you. Those children need help. And we will need it if we step in," he said. The crying came again, fainter, but still there. Something broke open inside her. Months of being acted on, of swallowing pain, of standing by while wrong things happened. "I've spent my whole life trying to protect children," she said, meeting his gaze. "I won't stop because it's risky. You'll stop because it's suicide." "Maybe," she said. "But I'd rather die trying than live knowing I walked away." They stared across the gap between their ways of surviving. His built on caution and cost. Hers on the belief that kids deserve help no matter what. "This is foolish," he said at last. "Probably. You have no weapon. You don't fight." "I have hands," she said. "I can carry water. Clean wounds. Calm scared little ones." He studied her face a long time. The smoke thickened. The crying thinned. "If we do this, we do it my way," he said slowly. "No questions. Do exactly what I say. You help. I try to keep you alive while you help." His voice went iron. "Those are not the same thing." They moved in low and careful, Nahuel guiding them through dry washes and behind rock spines that hid their approach. The smell met them first, burning wood mixed with something worse. A small homestead lay broken, a log cabin, a lean-to barn, a trampled garden. The roof sagged, still smoking. Bodies dotted the yard. Cassandra swallowed hard. "Raiders," Nahuel said, scanning the ground. "Apache from the sign. But they're long gone." "How can you tell?" "Tracks have sharp edges, old. Fire's been hot for hours." He pointed to marks in the dust. "They took captives. Left in a rush." The crying floated again, and she traced it to a root cellar behind the house, its heavy door cracked. "There," she whispered. Nahuel lifted a hand, listening. Then he nodded. 3 children, maybe 4. Very young. They eased to the door. He called in Apache first, then English. "We're here to help. Are you hurt?" The sobbing stopped, replaced by terrified quiet. "My name is Cassandra," she said, using the gentle tone she'd used for scared students. "We won't hurt you. Can you tell me your names?" A tiny voice rose from the dark. "I'm Emma." My brother Billy's here. And baby Sarah. Billy got burned. He won't wake up. Cassandra shot a look at Nahuel. He nodded grim. They hauled the door open. In the earthen hollow, 3 kids huddled. Emma about 8, hair tangled and face streaked with soot. Billy older, maybe 10, slumped against the wall, angry red burns on his arms and cheeks. And a baby no more than 2. Where are your parents? Cassandra asked softly as she climbed down. Papa went to fight, Emma said through tears. Mama hit us. She said don't come out no matter what. Cassandra's heart ached as she understood. Their mother had bought time with her life. Billy needs help, she told Nahuel. Those burns are bad. Nahuel knelt and checked the boy with gentle hands. Breathing smoke too. We need a doctor. Fort Bowie, 20 miles east. Cassandra looked from the cramped cellar to the children. Emma tried to be brave, but her cheeks were wet. The baby whimpered. Billy's breaths were rough and shallow. We can't carry them all, she whispered. We can try, Nahuel said, already planning. Ayana can take the boy and the baby. We walk. Take turns carrying the girl when she tires. It's a full day with children. Less if we push. He met her eyes. But you're right. It's very dangerous. More dangerous than leaving them, she asked. Different dangerous, he said. He climbed out, swept the scene again with a fighter's eye. Raiders might return. Or other Apache who won't forgive what we're doing. He nodded toward the bodies. Blood draws blood. Cassandra felt the weight of what he was risking. Not just his safety. His standing among his own. You don't have to do this, she said. Neither do you. I do, she answered, and he seemed to hear the truth in it. He gave one short nod and set to work. He built a stretcher from a blanket and 2 broken fence rails, and rigged it to Ayana's saddle. The baby could ride in front of him, held safe. Emma, Cassandra said gently, we're taking you to a safe place. Can you be very brave for me? Emma nodded, solemn. Will Billy be okay? We're going to do everything we can. Before they left, Nahuel took one last look across the ruined yard. This changes things, he said quietly. Word will spread. Tension will climb. And when we walk into Fort Bowie with these children, he shook his head. Some will see proof not every Apache is an enemy. Others will call it a trick. What do you call it? Cassandra asked. He lifted Billy onto the stretcher with care. A choice you can't unmake. They set out beneath the rising sun. 2 unlikely guardians leading 3 orphans across hard land toward an unsure welcome. Smoke still drifted from the broken home behind them. Ahead lay 20 miles of desert, Apache country, and a thin hope they'd reach help in time. Emma slipped a small hand into Cassandra's. For the first time since Copper Ridge, Cassandra felt the old weight of duty, not to herself, but to lives more fragile than her own. Thank you, she told Nahuel when they topped a low ridge and the far line of Fort Bowie shimmered in the distance. Don't thank me yet, he said, scanning the horizon. We aren't there. Gratitude stayed on Cassandra's tongue, but the road ahead stayed rough. The trek to Fort Bowie felt like a trial set by the sun itself. Billy's breaths grew ragged. Heat burned his skin hotter than fever. Baby Sarah cried in tired bursts, not understanding the jolt of travel or the strange arms that held her. Emma proved sturdy for her size, walking beside Cassandra for long hours without complaint, tiny legs working double to match their pace. When she finally stumbled, Nahuel lifted her onto Ayana behind Billy's stretcher without a word. I can keep walking, Emma whispered. Save your strength, Cassandra told her gently. We may need your help with the baby later. It was a kind lie to give the child purpose, not helplessness. Emma nodded like a soldier. As they moved, Cassandra kept stealing looks at Nahuel. The man called a ruthless hunter handled the children with quiet care. When Billy moaned, he was there at once, checking the burns, steadying the boy with a calm hand. When the baby fussed, Nahuel sang in a low voice, soft, steady notes that eased her cries. "Where'd you learn that?" Cassandra asked during a short rest, nodding at the dozing toddler cradled against him. "My sister had little ones," he said simply. "Before the soldiers came." The past tense said enough. Cassandra did not press. By midday, the heat turned cruel. They huddled under mesquite, but even the shade shimmered. Billy's fever spiked. His breathing went wild and fast. "We have to cool him," Cassandra said. Water was tight. Still. Nahuel soaked his bandana and laid it on Billy's brow without hesitation. Cassandra flinched at the loss of precious water. "We'll find more," he said. "Children can't wait." She finally understood the full price he was paying, not only danger from others, but the risk of losing his place among his own people. He was gambling his name, his standing, the armor of fear that had kept him alive. "Why?" she asked, voice low, while Emma played with pebbles, and the baby slept. "Why risk so much for children who aren't yours?" He was quiet a long time. When he spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "I couldn't save my sister's little ones. I watched soldiers burn our homes and take the young to schools that killed the Apache inside them." He looked at the boy's flushed face. "I can't undo that. But I can make sure these 3 don't die alone in the sand." Cassandra touched his hand. No speech, just a brief, honest thank you. As afternoon eased, they pushed harder. Emma rode, without protest now, heavy with sleep. The baby's skin broke out in a heat rash, and she cried in spurts. Billy drifted in and out, muttering broken words. Emma spotted the dust first. "Someone's coming," she said, pointing east. Nahuel steered them into a rocky fold and studied the riders. His hand slid to his rifle. "Cavalry patrol. 6. "That's good, right?" Cassandra asked. "They'll help us reach the fort." "Maybe," he said, face set. "Or maybe they shoot first when they see an Apache with white children." The truth hit like a cold splash. At a glance, Nahuel could look exactly like the nightmare they'd been told about. "Give me your rifle," she said. "What?" "Your rifle now." He hesitated. She pressed on. "If I'm holding it, you're not the threat. The picture changes. You don't know how to use it. I don't need to. I only need to hold it." She met his eyes. "Trust me." After a tight beat, he handed over. She checked the safety, then stood a little ahead of him, feet planted. The patrol thundered in, horses throwing dust. A captain with a gray beard raised his hand. "You there. Step away from that Apache." "Captain." Cassandra called back, using the firm voice that had ruled noisy classrooms. "These children need a doctor now. The boy has bad burns and smoke in his lungs." The captain's eyes took in the scene, a white woman holding a rifle, an Apache standing calm beside a hurt boy, 2 other children scared and dusty. It didn't match his training. "Ma'am, are you being held?" "No," she said clearly. "This man saved them from a raid. We're taking them to Fort Bowie." A young trooper nudged forward, nerves tight. "Captain, that's the one they call Blood Hunter. I saw the posters." The air snapped with tension, sharp as lightning before a storm. Nahuel went very still. Cassandra stepped farther in front of him. "Sergeant," she said to the young rider, level and steady, "do you see any blood here? Or do you see a man who spent hours carrying a hurt child through the desert?" The captain swung down, moved to Billy, and stared at the burns. "Bad," he muttered. "Kid needs a surgeon soon." "Then help us," Cassandra said. "Please. Don't waste time with fear." "Ma'am, you don't understand. That Apache has a name," she cut in, polite but iron. "Nahuel. And he's done more for these children than anyone today. Will you help save a life, or let a boy die while you argue?" The captain looked from Billy to Nahuel to Cassandra, then made his call. "Corporal Hayes, water. Thompson, fix a stretcher." He faced Nahuel. "Can you keep up on foot?" "Yes." "Then move." The boy hasn't got long. What followed blurred into dust and urgency. Soldiers shared horses. Cassandra rode behind a trooper, still gripping Nahuel's rifle. Emma clung to another saddle, eyes wide. Nahuel ran alongside with tireless focus, attention locked on Billy, now strapped to a proper army litter. When the fort's walls rose ahead, Cassandra knew everything was about to change. Word would spread. The feared Apache bringing in white children, the woman who stood up to a patrol for him. Some would call it a step toward peace. Others would spit the word traitor. But she watched Nahuel check Billy one more time, worry plain on his face for a boy he hadn't known at sunup. Whatever came next, they had chosen right. Sometimes the biggest fights weren't won with bullets or speeches, but small acts of kindness that refused to bow to hate. Fort Bowie exploded into ordered chaos. Dr. Samuel Morrison, the post surgeon, took one look at Billy and seized the infirmary. Runners dashed to tell Colonel James Patterson about the raid. Soldiers gathered, stunned by the sight of the blood hunter, walking quiet among them. Cassandra helped carry the children and kept a watchful eye on Nahuel. Men stared with open distrust, a few with barely hidden rage. Nahuel drifted near exits, ready to vanish if the air turned deadly. "Ma'am," called Captain Reynolds, the patrol leader, while Dr. Morrison worked. "Colonel Patterson wants to see you." "And him." "Now, the children will be cared for," Reynolds said. "Orders." Cassandra glanced at Nahuel. He gave a small nod. They crossed the parade ground under 100 stairs. The fort was built to hold against Apache attacks, and here one walked beside a white woman as if he belonged. It was the kind of picture that made people whisper. Colonel Patterson's office was plain and clean. Maps crowded the walls, dotted with pins that told of recent clashes. The colonel, a hard-used man in his 50s with sharp eyes, studied them as they entered. "Miss Mitchell," he said, voice polite but guarded. "Captain Reynolds says you've had quite a day." "Yes, sir," Cassandra answered. "Those children needed help." "And you," he said, turning to Nahuel, using his real name on purpose. "Reynolds says you helped pull white children from an Apache raid." "Yes," Nahuel said. "That gives me a problem," Patterson admitted. "You're wanted for raids. But here you are, saving 3 children." "I'm here," Nahuel said evenly, "because children were dying." "A noble line," Patterson said, "but it doesn't erase the past." The air tightened. Cassandra saw the cold logic. One of the most hunted men in the territory had practically delivered himself. The urge to lock him up had to be strong. Before she could speak, shouts split the calm outside. The thunder of many horses. Then the hard crack of distant rifle shots. Patterson strode to the window, looked out, and swore under his breath. "War party," he said. 50, maybe more. Cassandra saw warriors sweeping over the hills, paint bright even from afar. More shots flared as sentries tested range from the walls. "They're not charging," Nahuel said, eyes narrowing. "That's a show of force." "A show of what?" Patterson asked. "Power. Warning." Nahuel's face settled. "They know I'm here." The colonel turned back, understanding dawning and chilling. "They came to take you?" "Not to rescue," Nahuel said plainly. "To kill me. Helping white children marks me as a traitor. They can't let that stand." The meaning hit Cassandra like a blow. By saving Emma, Billy, and Sarah, he had signed his death warrant with his own people. The riders outside were not a rescue party. They were an execution squad. "Sir," Captain Reynolds burst in. "Their leader wants to parley. He demands the traitor be handed over. If we refuse, he says they'll attack." Patterson looked to Nahuel. "Your read." "They mean it," Nahuel said. "Enough young hot blood out there to charge these walls. But it'll cost them dearly. Some of their elders will know that." Rifle fire cracked closer. Through the window, Cassandra saw soldiers rushing to the line. Somewhere behind them, Dr. Morrison fought for Billy's life, while Emma and Sarah waited in fear. "There might be another way," Nahuel said quietly. "I'm listening," Patterson replied. "Let me speak to them," Nahuel said. "Not as a prisoner, as a go-between." "You'd risk walking out there?" Patterson asked, eyebrows up. "Some are young and ready to burn," Nahuel said. "But some remember the taste of peace. Maybe I can pull them back. And if you can't, then you lose nothing you weren't about to lose." A bullet snapped the office window, spraying glass. The first real probes had started. In the distance, Cassandra thought she heard Emma crying for her mother. "Sir," Cassandra said suddenly, "I want to go with him." Both men stared. "Absolutely not," Patterson said. "They came because an Apache helped white children." "Then let them see a white woman return that trust," she said. "Those three are alive because he risked everything for them. Now he's risking it again for you. I won't let him face his people alone." "Cassandra," Nahuel said softly, "it's my choice." She held his gaze. He saw in her the same stubborn courage that made her walk toward smoke. After a long beat, he nodded. "It might help," he said, "or get us both killed." "Then we'll die together," she answered. Patterson dragged a hand through his hair. Gunfire climbed outside. "This is madness." "So is letting good people die, because we were too afraid to try," Cassandra said. At last the colonel nodded, jaw tight. "God help us all," he muttered. The walk across the parade ground felt like walking to the gallows. Soldiers watched in hushed disbelief. Reynolds thrust a white flag into Cassandra's hand, though she doubted it meant much to warriors, calling a man traitor. At the gate, Nahuel looked at her one last time. "You can still change your mind," he said. "So can you," she replied. "I can't," he said, calm and settled. "You have a life ahead. Children who might need a teacher. And you have people who need to learn that mercy isn't weakness," she said. The great doors creaked open. Outside, 50 mounted warriors formed a half-circle in the blazing light, paints dark, weapons ready. At the center sat a man whose presence tightened Nahuel's shoulders, a leader, maybe an elder. They stepped out together, side by side, two small figures against a huge sky, carrying with them the hope that care could beat fury, at least for a day. Behind them, soldiers held their breath along the wall. Ahead, warriors waited to judge one of their own who had chosen compassion over anger. The wind brought the smell of sage and gun smoke. In the infirmary, a boy fought for breath while two little girls waited for the grown-ups to decide what kind of world they would wake up in. As they approached, Nahuel's fingers brushed Cassandra's. Just a touch, not a grip. Whatever came next, they would meet it the way they had met everything since Devil's Canyon, with clear eyes and stubborn courage, trusting that some choices matter more than survival. The war chief at the center was older than Cassandra expected, skin lined by sun and years, scars like maps across his chest and arms. His eyes held the hard truth of many losses. When he spoke, his voice was steady and final. "Nahuel of the Chiricahua, you stand before us, touched by our enemies." Nahuel stopped 20 paces away. Cassandra stayed at his side, feeling the young warrior's anger like heat, hands tight on weapons, jaws set. The elders watched differently, weighing each breath. "I stand before you, Mongas," Nahuel answered, naming the chief with respect, "as I have always stood, as one who tries to keep life safe." "You protect the children of those who kill our people," Mongas replied, rage aged by time. "They burn our homes and take our land. You have forgotten who you are." "I remember," Nahuel said, shoulders taut but voice even. "I am Stormwalker's son, White Eagle's grandson. I am Apache. I am also a man who will not let children die when I can help." A young rider with fresh paint kicked his horse forward. "Children of our enemies." You should have left them for the buzzards. And if they were Apache children in soldiers' hands, Nahuel asked softly, would you say the same? The question drifted over the circle like smoke. A few warriors shifted, memory pulling at them. Children taken far away, villages burned to ash. Mangas lifted his hand, and the whispers died. You speak as if white children and Apache children are the same, he said. They are not. These people make war. They break us and call it good. So we become like them. Nahuel stepped one pace forward. Rifles twitched in answer. We prove our strength by killing the small and the helpless. The 3 I carried were not my enemies. They were caught in a war they did not choose. His voice grew firmer. Emma, 8 years old, hid in a cellar while her mother died to protect her. Billy, 10, burned trying to save his baby sister. Sarah, too little to understand why the world turned to fire. He spread his hands. Are these the enemies who will end us if we let them live? Cassandra watched faces harden and loosen, anger fighting with memory. Some of the younger men stayed stony, but among the elders, doubt flickered. You lived too long with whites, another warrior shouted. You forgot the taste of our blood on their hands. I forget nothing, Nahuel said, the pain plain now. I remember soldiers taking my sister's children. I remember homelands burned and families scattered like leaves. But I also remember my grandmother's teaching, that we are people of honor, not beasts ruled by revenge. Pretty words, the young rider sneered. Words don't bring back the dead. Neither does killing the innocent, Nahuel answered. Mangas's hand rose again, the circle quieted. His gaze shifted to Cassandra. When he spoke to her, his English was careful but clear. White woman, why do you stand beside when you should fear? Every eye swung to her. Up on the walls, soldiers tracked the moment with rifles. Out here, a wrong word could tip them all into blood. I've learned fear and wisdom aren't the same, Cassandra said. I feared him at first because of stories. Stories lie. Actions don't. What truth have his actions shown you? Mangas asked. That he shares water with the thirsty and food with the hungry, she said. That he carried a burned child through killing heat. That he risked his life for those who couldn't protect themselves. She met the chief's eyes. He is a man of honor, just as he says. Honor, Mangas repeated, like he was tasting the word. Strange coming from those who break every treaty. I can't speak for all whites, just like you can't speak for every Apache, she said. I can only tell you what I saw. He chose mercy when he could have chosen hate. He risked everything for children he didn't know. If that isn't honor, then the word is empty. Silence stretched. The wind lifted the grass. Somewhere high, a hawk cried. An older warrior broke it. I knew Stormwalker, he said. He spared a white trader once, lost in the desert. That man later helped make peace for 2 seasons. He looked around. Maybe the son carries the father's wisdom. Or his weakness, the young. Rider snapped. Ayana, Mangas said suddenly. Nahuel's paint mare trotted forward as if she understood. The chief studied the horse, eyes softening. Your grandmother's mare. Still strong. She remembers me, Nahuel said, voice low. And I remember my grandmother's lessons. Balance. Too much weight on one side breaks the scales. Mangas was quiet a long time. She would also say children are sacred, no matter their skin. He slid off his horse and walked to Nahuel with slow, open hands. When he reached him, he set a weathered palm on Nahuel's shoulder. You have chosen a hard path, nephew. You will make enemies here and there. I know, Nahuel said. It may be the only path that doesn't end in ruin. Mangas faced his warriors. This man acted with honor, he said. We may question his choice, but we will not take his blood today. The young rider spurred forward, furious. And our dead. Justice is not revenge, Mangas said firmly. We honor our dead by living with honor, not by becoming the monsters our enemies expect. Not all were happy, but none defied him. One by one, they backed away, then turned and slid into the heat haze like they were part of the land itself. It was over, for now. Cassandra and Nahuel walked back to the gate. Colonel Patterson stood waiting, relief written all over him. It's done, he asked. For the moment, Nahuel said. But everything changes. I can't return to my people. I can't stay here. Where will you go? The colonel asked. Nahuel looked at Cassandra, an unspoken question in his eyes. I don't know yet. 3 days later, Dr. Morrison said Billy would live. The burns were healing. The boy's breathing sounded steady again. Emma stuck to Cassandra's skirts with the stubborn trust of a child who had found a safe harbor. Baby Sarah smiled now and then, chasing dust motes with her hands. They'll need homes, Colonel Patterson said, watching the children play in the courtyard. It'll take good folks to raise orphans. I know, Cassandra said softly. That evening, with the mountains turning purple and gold, she found Nahuel outside the walls. He sat in the cooling air, watching stars wake in the dark. Ayana grazed nearby, calm as the night. I keep thinking about your grandmother's lessons, Cassandra said, settling beside him. And about teaching children to see beyond old stories. Nahuel listened. There's a valley, she went on, about 50 miles north. Sweet water. Good shelter from wind. Enough to support a small place. What kind of place? He asked. One where Apache children and white children learn side by side, she said. Where the kid next to you is just another kid, not an enemy. She held his gaze. It would need a teacher who knows both worlds, and a protector most people don't know how to trust. Or they learn to trust us because we trust each other, he said after a beat. He turned back to the sky, thinking. It would be dangerous, he said. People on both sides would hate it. Most things worth doing are risky, Cassandra answered. We might fail. We might not. He looked at her then, the man who'd given her water when she was lost, food when she was starving, safety when she had none. The man who had carried strangers' children and stood between a fort and a war party. A school, he said slowly. A place where children learn the world is bigger than fear. Where they learn stories can lie, but actions tell the truth. That courage isn't being unafraid. It's doing the right thing even when you're scared. As if the words had called them, Emma wandered over from the courtyard. Billy came after, walking carefully, but on his own, a soldier carrying baby, Sarah close behind. The three settled at their feet, like small stars drawn into a new constellation. Will you really build a school? Emma asked, bold the way only kids can be. Cassandra looked at Nahuel. Her hope shone. Back at her in his eyes. Yes, she said. We will. Under the wide Arizona sky, with children tucked close and the night smelling faintly of sage, Cassandra Mitchell and Nahuel began to plan a future neither could have imagined on the morning they met at Devil's Canyon. It would be hard. They would build on ground scorched by old hate. But they had learned the foundation that holds is always the same. Trust, courage, and a stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better. The desert wind carried a hint of rain and something else. Possibility. For the first time in both their lives, the horizon didn't look like exile. It looked like home.